it has been the most difficult time of my life. I can't even, I say you can't imagine, because there are certainly a lot of people out there that have been through and lived through the same, type of thing that I've been going through for the past couple weeks. But losing a child is something that is, you just never think it would happen, and then when it does happen, you can't believe it. I mean, I wake up every single morning since this time, and boom, that's the first thing that comes into my head, and I think, well, hopefully that was a nightmare. Was this a dream or whatever? And it just, of course, takes a minute or two for it to sink in that no, this has really happened, and since our last podcast, we've gotten a ton of information and a ton of contacts and people reaching out about information, of what may have really happened. I know, everything that was reported said that Brian committed suicide by hanging himself, and now since that time, at least I'm certain in a lot of people's mind, and certainly in my mind, I have serious doubts as to that actually happened. I mean, just things that right now we're not at liberty to discuss them, or some of the parts about it we're not at liberty to discuss, because there's still the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation is conducting their own investigation into what happened, and they're not, it's still an ongoing investigation at this time. And once they finish that, they will report to the Attorney General in Hardeman County. Unfortunately, that's that's the same place that the jail and the sheriff and that I don't know. To me, it all seems like
it's a good old boys network, basically.
Yeah, it really does. That's the stuff that we've been hearing about what goes on up there in Hardeman County. So it's just been very, very frustrating. I realize, of course, the sad thing is nothing's going to bring Brian back, but by the same token, we just want to know the truth. We want to know what really happened, and we've spoken and had been contacted by not one, not two, not three, but 4 different eyewitnesses to the incidents leading up to the time that Brian died, and they've all been on the same page, exactly what their stories all were exactly the same on what took place before all this happened, and every single one of them said, I mean, nobody, there was nobody that saw Brian in his last few moments. At least nobody that is talking to us. But every single person that was in the cell with Brian or in the jail with Brian that day swears. I mean, one of the guys said, Mr. Lawler, he said, I've got $92 to my name. And he said, but if I had $9 million, I would bet it, all of it, that Brian didn't hang himself. Yeah. And so, I mean, just, and these aren't people that have anything to gain by talking to us. As a matter of fact, a lot of them are scared and are worried about their own safety after talking to us and telling us some of the things that went on in the jail cell that day. So it's it's really, really frustrating to hear these things, and but we just want to try to find out what really happened to Brian.
Yeah, I know you were talking to some local media here in Memphis.
Yeah, we've spoken to almost all the TV stations here in Memphis. Every one of them have done a feature story on this, and the Commercial Appeal, the newspaper. I mean, we just want to find out the
Right.
truth.
And the important thing is, you're talking to all the media, we talk about on the podcast, is it can't just go away. You got to keep the pressure on whoever is doing the investigation, keep the pressure on the people to give you the truth, because I would assume that these people are hoping that you move on with your life and just accept what they tell you, which is not the case.
Well, we certainly don't think it's the case.
Right.
But it's just the frustrating thing about it is because the TBI people, they don't have to give us any information at all until the investigation is finished, and they have not. And we'll even ask about how long these investigations might go, and they said one of them went 11 months at one time. Yeah, so they're it's just frustrating. It's very, very frustrating. But once we see the results of that investigation, then we may have to launch an investigation of our own. And this is not about a lawsuit or trying to sue the jail or sue the sheriff or sue the county or anything. It's not about that at all. It's just about finding out what really happened.
Yeah. If people are curious about what Jerry said to the TV stations, Jerry posted on his Twitter on Dinner with King. It's on our Twitter, so I know a lot of people outside of Memphis area listen to the podcast. So go to Dinner with King on Twitter, and you can watch the newscast of what Jerry said on the TV station, and see some photos that they provided as well. And keep talking about Brian. I know a lot of people have tweeted photos, videos of Brian and news stories. So I think people are saying justice for Brian. Rightfully deserves the justice for Brian. King, and this podcast is yours. It's your baby. Even though I love talking to you each and every week. So I know people will be asking about updates about what's going on, and you can say whatever you want whenever you want. But I also wanted to have this podcast to be an outlet to have some fun, take your mind off things, relive some things you did in your life throughout the years, and just kind of get your mind off. And that's why I stayed down here for 10 days, King. I was worried about you.
No, and I do appreciate that, and I want to once again say thank you to. I mean, it would be impossible to take now till forever to try to thank each person individually that has reached out and sent their prayers and their well wishes and their flowers for Brian and cards and letters. Everything you could think of, people have just, the outpouring has just been amazing. And all the way from family to friends to fans, other wrestlers, and it's just been amazing how much Brian was thought of and by how many people. And that's one of the reasons that we're going on with it. It's just like, hey, we just want justice for Brian. That's right. Basically it.
Yeah. Well, he deserves it because all the details surrounding this doesn't add up at all. And it's just like I said. If you guys want to watch the video on our Twitter, Dinner with King, you can watch the newscast. We post them all whenever Jerry does an interview locally in Memphis. You can be able to do that, and also the Jerry Lawler's Memphis Classic Memphis Wrestling Show with Brian is on Jerry's website. If you want to watch that with some classic matches with Brian. King, I don't mean to switch. You mean anything else you want to add about the investigation, or you personally with what's going on? I'm sure people worried about you. They want to know more. But anything else you want to add about Brian before we switch gears?
I mean, I'm really literally texting, as you can see, while we're trying to do this interview. A reporter from Channel 24 here in Memphis is asking for some pictures that they have used in other reports, and I think we talked about the fact that some of these pictures, and my attorney Ted Handsome said a picture's worth 1,000 words, and there are a couple of pictures that of Brian after he passed where the I guess they said that he was hanged by shoelaces, and there are a couple of pictures of Brian's neck where it's almost the bruising from what would be a shoelace, apparently, goes around his neck on each side, the back, each side, and then it stops in the front of his neck. And the bruising stops for what would be about the distance of his hand, as if and then when we look at a picture of his hand, there's a bruising that looks just exactly like the bruises on the side of his neck going along the inside of Brian's hand, which to me looks like he had his hand trying to pull something off of his neck that may have been choking him. It's just, those pictures aren't consistent with somebody hanging themselves.
Right.
So there's just a lot of stuff that we have talked about a little bit, but then there's just still a lot of stuff that we can't talk about yet.
Right. Even with shoelaces, I mean, Brian's was built because shoelaces support a guy of that physique to hold them up. And I don't even know a place in the cell where that's able to hold up someone that
right.
physical.
Well, and that's been the other part of the mystery, so to speak, is the fact that the cell that Brian was supposed to be in has absolutely no place that you could tie off a shoestring or rope or anything, in order to hang yourself from it. It's just, so many questions. We're waiting on. There's even questions about the surveillance cameras in the jail. This is a fairly new jail with supposed upgrades. Some of the inmates said that cameras are everywhere, and that one of the inmates said, "Man, you could walk over in the pod and start to pick up a piece of paper, and the voice would come over the intercom, don't pick up that piece of paper." It's like they were being watched at every step they made, every time inside this jail. So if that's the case, then why haven't they come forward with video of what took place? Then we also heard, this is just a rumor though, that we have to substantiate, that 20 of their surveillance cameras were inoperable. That right there is just, I don't know if it would.
Inexcusable for a place to keep people in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of stuff that we're going to have to find out from the jail and from the correction officers and all of that sort of stuff. Every inmate's movements should be logged in and tracked and everything all day long. So, we're just going to keep looking, keep searching till we find out.